This week we're looking at which Xenos filth should be joining your side. There are 30 Xenos characters at the time of this video. Let's see who makes the top 10. This is no dirty dozen though, it's just 10 of the most versatile and impressive Xenos characters in the game that you will want to be leveling up. In at number 10, it's a new entry from our lovable Aldari Ranger Calandus. This masked warrior wearing a delicious camellia cloak carries one of the most impressive guns in the game. The Ranger long rifle fires energy bolts capable of piercing most armor and definitely goes straight to your heart. The best place for her is at the back of your army, waiting patiently for someone to come into her range, and then boom, her overwatch and 25% extra damage from the heavy weapon trait means that she's going to make it a 4v5 before the enemy even knows what hit them. But this is no ordinary sniper, she has so much more abilities hidden underneath those stunning leather pants. The most obvious answer to any sniper is to close the gap as quickly as possible after you've absorbed their overwatch. But with Calandus, that's incredibly difficult to do. As my favorite sniper in the game, she uses her fire and reposition active skill to make sure that she stays one step ahead of the enemy, hitting them and repositioning into a safe place, allowing the rest of her team to fall onto whoever was dumb enough to chase after her. But that is not even the most impressive skill she has, with her wire weave net making sure that if someone does manage to close the gap, she will absolutely smash them in the face with 2 piercing attacks. If she kills them, they don't even manage to get their melee attack off. And it's an incredible display that has seen Calandus pop up time and time again in Tournament Arena and Guild Wars, being an incredibly annoying character to put down for good. So if you want to see a stunning sniper in leather pants whose weapon isn't out because they're pleased to see you, then make sure you pick up Calandus today. In at number 9, dropping 3 places from last year's top 10, it's the psychic organism zoanthrope, Neurothrope. And this pulsing nexus of the hive mind's psychic might may look like a mutated shrimp, but they are certainly not a tasty treat to be snacked on. That giant nose spike and wrinkly brain gives me indigestion just thinking about it. But they are no joke in the battlefield, as they can shoot an extremely powerful blast of warp energy, easily potent enough to eliminate Space Marines, and anyone who's played Space Marine 2 will know that these are not meant to be messed with. With an impressive array of traits in Tacticus, you have to take them out quickly or they will fly around the battlefield causing you all sorts of problems. Every time that I leave them on the back lines, I find my troops racked with neuroparasites and suddenly falling to their deaths. And this horrifying tyrannid has actually been created using harvested Aldari DNA to help form living conduits to the tyrannid hive mind, which is the collective consciousness of the tyrannid species. The only way to deal with this flying shrimp is to close the distance on him, as he suffers from close combat weakness and can be really punished if you start a turn with a character next to him. Just make sure you aren't sending in Psychers to do that job, because Neurothrope's Shadow and the Warp trait will reduce their damage by 25%. As a Psyker itself, it keeps other Tyranids focused on battle at hand with its Synapse trait that allows other friendly units to ignore any instinctive behavior or battle fatigue they may suffer from. And of course, it only has 1 hit, which makes it a great addition to any 1-hit legendary event battles, although you do need to be very careful with positioning due to its weaknesses. So with so many great traits, and especially the neuroparasites which have seen them be the leader of the Psyker team in guild raid battles, he rightfully finds himself in the top 10 list. So if you want something that is the head of the xenomorph from the movie's Alien stuck onto the body of a shrimp, then this one is for you. In at number 8, down 3 places from last year's top 10, we find another Tyrannid, Tyrant Guard. And you all know how much I love this big fat drooling clubster. I love tanky characters that are able to hold their own in the battlefield, and this Tyrannid, who has Space Marine DNA running through its immense body, is capable of doing more than just that. At this moment of writing, Tyrant Guard is the character that gains the most points in legendary events, and that is another reason why he's such an amazing character for me. As I love legendary events, he's a top pick for my teams. The reason is that if you position Tyrant Guard in the middle of your team and stick it next to someone like Neurothrope with the Synapse range, or you just don't move at all, then Tyrant Guard will straight up reduce the amount of damage done to all adjacent units. But not only this, being a huge giant, they have big target trait, and that also reduces the number of hits adjacent friendly units take from ranged characters. Together, this is a massive difference and means that with the right team around them, they can easily survive to the end of any track. Of course, the limiting factor with all tanks is usually their offensive power, and Tyrant Guard is no different in that regard. They do have Crushing Strike, which allows them to deal an extra 50% melee damage if they haven't moved this turn, but it isn't high enough to see them high in the list of the most damaging characters in the game. So lots of high praise for this character. Why do we find him this far down the list? Very simply, because remember, we're looking at the most versatile champions in the game, and he is great at some things, but definitely lacking at others. Even with all that said, I really think he's worthy of his place on this list just because of what he does well. He does it really well. All in all, Tyrant Guard will always be a really important part of your team whenever you need a defensive character, so if you want a giant with lobster claws, then Clobster is the one for you. In at number 7, down 4 places from last year, it's a Farseer Xenos Psyker, Eldryon. Last year we saw Eldryon really living up to his potential in Warhammer lore, as he was the undisputed top Psyker in the game. But this year we've seen a big change to his active ability Doom, where it no longer affects all attacks, it only affects normal attacks, except for his own faction Aldari, who are still boosted with all their attacks. Complicated? Not really. It just means he's lost some power, but honestly, this character is still the number 1 Psyker in the game for me, and because of that, they deserve their place in this list, just a little bit lower than last season. So what can Eldryon do? Well, other than their passive ability, Doom, which boosts damage against any enemy 2 hexes from Eldryon, they can charge themselves up throughout the battle and then unleash a devastating attack with their Executioner ability. He doesn't have many other traits, but as a Psyker, they can use Smite to bounce an attack from one enemy to an adjacent one. As with Neurothrope, Eldryon needs to be close down and taken out as quickly as possible. So if you want a pointy-eared space elf who is still one of the best Psykers in the game, then Eldryon is the champion for you. In at number 6, it's another new entry, Jude Laska from the Genestealer's Cult, and this little ball of arms has really started to make a splash for a lot of people as they struggle to take her down. Ever since the release of the Genestealer Cult as a faction, I've been leveling this faction like crazy, and that was even before Jude joined us as the last part of that team. I definitely didn't catch on to her usefulness in this game initially, but ever since adding her to my team, I've never looked back. A big chunk of her power comes from her passive, hypersensory abilities, which is potentially one of the most annoying passive abilities in the game. The first time the Jude is attacked, she dodges away, and if she is still within 2 hexes of the unit that attacked her, then she batters them back. Alongside that, she drops a decoy in place, and although she does take some damage, it's only really a tickle. The amount of times I've seen players struggle to work out how to deal with this in Tournament Arena is incredible. But it doesn't just stop there, because she also has one of my favourite actives in the game as well. It doesn't sound that interesting, but with her heroic Fusillade, she will move to a close-by hex, and then she will batter nearby enemies with 6 projectile shots. Now, projectile shots only have a 15% pierce ratio, but the other part of this skill is that it adds a lot of crit damage, and I have quite often seen Jude destroy 2 or 3 characters in one go, especially in a tournament arena that's capped at gold level. And with all of this, as a Genestealer character, if you manage to take her down, she'll be resurrected if there's a free decoy lying around, and then you can use heroic Fusillade again. Really awesome stuff. So if you want a lady with 3 arms, a ridged forehead and a torch shining in your eyes, then Jude is the Kellamorph for you. And at number 5, and up 4 places from last year, it's the Squighound Carer, Snotvlogga. And this impressive fungal zookeeper swaps places with Tyrant Guard on the list. And it should come as no surprise to anyone, as we've seen the orcs really start to appear in a lot of different modes, like mold on an old piece of bread. At the heart of the team, it is Snotvlogga, and he is a pretty unique spawning character, because when he is done pooping out little grots, and everyone around him is dead, he is still an absolute beast on his own, especially to big targets or vehicles through his Beast Slayer trait. His passive Squighound is a fairly straightforward, as his hound will take a bite out of anyone that Snotvlogga attacks, and then a grot will be pooped out if there are less than 5 friendly grots on the battlefield. Also, as long as Snotvlogga is on his feet, then the grots will ignore battle fatigue, making these little green snots a right pain to get rid of, especially as they will start multiplying if they haven't taken damage. Snotvlogga isn't finished here though, as he can spawn even more grots onto the battlefield with his active Get Him Runts. If you position him correctly, then any enemies that are adjacent to the new grots will be taunted for 1 round. It's a devastating active, although the precision in positioning means again there isn't much room for error. And all of the orcs really work well together with the orc passive Get Stuck In, because when an enemy is getting surrounded by all your green guys, then they all get an extra hit. And as the battlefield is overwhelmed with phlegm, it's nearly a guarantee. So if you need a bold orc sporting a fur scarf, then make sure to pick up this real fun guy. And at number 4, we have another new entry and another orc, and this time it's Boss Golgorts. And this incredible war boss is one of my absolute favourite characters that have been designed in Tacticus. Forget boring space marine armour, let's stick him in the remains of a crane. We don't need a jetpack, we need a 3-cylinder engine rumbling away at the back. Do we need a dull power sword? No way, we need a razor-sharp set of circular saws on the end of a staff. And if all that isn't enough, then let's stick a laughing grot with a chain gun on top of his head. What insanity put this together? But there is nothing insane about how this towering slab of muscle, metal and bad attitude leads from the front as he bulldozes his way through the battlefield. He has a wild array of traits, 5 in total, ranging from the Orcs faction trait Get Stuck In that we talked about a moment ago with Snotflogger, but also being in crane armour makes him a mechanical character, as well as being a big target, and that lets him block a hit from a ranged attack against any adjacent allies. If he hasn't moved this turn, then he uses his giant fists to make a crushing strike to absolutely smash any enemy with an extra 50% damage, and he is just a brute. His passive Light Him Up sees his grots firing from the top of his armour after Golgorts has attacked someone else, but more than this, the little grot will also take one last hit at anyone in a final vengeance style attack if the boss falls in battle. And yet again we are seeing a really important active ability grace the top of this chart, as Wah lets the boss call in 2 orc boys to rampage around and destroy the enemy. This really is a powerful ability because apart from the versatility and damage the orc boys add to the team, it also lets Golgorts deal extra damage and move in extra space. There is nothing more annoying than slightly stepping too far in tournament arena only to have this big lump charging at you followed by 2 even bigger lumps. And anyone could imagine that with all this excellence he was born in the USA, but this boss is just dancing in the dark and sweating from filthy green pores. And at number 3, and down one place, it's the Necron Canoptech Spider, Aleph Null. Still one of my favourite characters of all time, as he was my first ever Diamond 3 character. I haven't regretted that choice for a moment because he's still one of the most versatile champions in the game. His survivability on anything outside of a full frontal assault is incredible, as he can repair himself or any mechanical characters, as well as regenerating 10% of its max health at the start of every turn due to the Necron's Living Metal faction bonus. Not only that, but his passive Fabricator Claw Array will also heal one random adjacent friendly mechanical unit at the end of his turn, or if he moves next to them during his turn. This really keeps his team going and going. If you try and corner him, then he will simply fly overhead, out of range and back to a safe place to heal. And if you do finally manage to take him down, then he will explode in a shower of nanites, dealing 25% direct damage to anybody nearby. But if there was a competition for the most screenshotted champion, then it would have to be Aleph Null due to his Scarab Hive's active ability. He will drop 2 of these little monsters on the battlefield, each of them taking 5 hits to kill, and if you don't kill them quickly enough, then the battlefield will be suddenly flooded with him, and you will be rushing to Reddit to post the disastrous result. So if you want a shiny web developer, then look no further than Aleph Null. And at number 2, and down one place, it's the battle-seated Tau, Shazfre Viorla Revas. And I don't think there's a single player in the game who hasn't fell foul to this character in their early days. But even when you leave that newbie status, this is not a character that you can simply ignore. So let's take a look at why this is the second most versatile Xenos champion in the game in 2025. Starting with the simple facts, Revas is a mechanical unit, and as you can imagine, she is a big target that means she can absorb a hit from a ranged character to any friendly units next to her. She can also fly, and all of that means that you will often just find her and Aleph Null partnered together on the battlefield as well as in this list. Aleph Null sitting behind her, keeping Revas alive, while Revas deflects shots and slowly burns the enemy down. The reason I say slowly is because if you can get into close combat with Revas, then her weapons suffer from a close combat weakness, which reduce her flamer melee attack by 50%, and her range cyclic ion blaster by 25%. Speaking of the cyclic ion blaster, this is in fact the name of her passive, and it adds additional particle damage hits to each attack, which has a 35% pierce ratio. It also adds more damage if the target has a marker light or the mechanical trait. But her real power is in the early warning override active ability. This is such an amazing ability if she's on your team, and such an annoying ability if she isn't. How it works is that it summons 2 shield drones, and then Revas starts overwatching. If any enemy troops enter her range, she blasts them, and providing they die, she will do the same to the next enemy, albeit with 1 less hit. As she has 6 hits to start with, she can theoretically wipe out 6 enemies. This overwatch only lasts for 1 turn, so you need to either avoid her or send in a character you are sure that won't die, like Celestine. The reason I really like this ability is because apart from the fact that the AI just stumbles into your weapons, it creates space on the battlefield for a turn, and in such a tactical game as this, that space is simply an opportunity that can be exploited because it can let you have the first attack and not your enemy. So if you want to be climbing the heights of legendary events, creating space in Tournament Arena, or just pretending you're wearing a giant mech suit, then Revas is the girl for you. In at number 1, and up 6 places from last year, it's a firefight marksman Shosil, and this might be a really surprising pick for the number 1 character, but after seeing her popping up in so many PvP battles, then it should be no surprise that this little Tau stands tall at the top of the list. So why has Shosil made such a jump this year compared to last year, and why do I feel that they are the most versatile Xenos character in the game in 2025? Well, firstly, I definitely underrated them last year, but they've also had a little tweak that means they automatically detach from enemies and find a new place to snipe you from. Previously, as soon as you close the distance with them, they would be pretty destroyed as they stopped spawning drones and would suffer from the same close combat weakness as Revas. That means their melee attack is reduced by 50% and ranged attack by 25%. Now you will often have to make the choice between chasing Shosil all over the battlefield, all the while getting pounded by the MV-71 sniper drone squad that is spawned as part of her passive ability. Usually this means your team are getting killed by the rest of the enemies as your lines are stretched out too thin. Again, it's a really impressive tactical nuance that has been added to the game. The other thing that Shosil's passive does is add a marker light to her target when she spawns a drone to fire at it. That means someone like Revas can boost her own damage, helping to make Shosil easily the best sniper in the game. Shosil's other trait, Camouflage, also helps to keep him alive, as it reduces ranged attacks by 1 hit if the enemy is within 2 hexes, or 2 hits if they're more than 2 hexes away. And then this is increased even further, as you can hide in tall grass, and it increases a reduction by 3 hits. This is then made even more annoying by her drones because they have a savior protocols that have a 50% chance to completely block any attack against Shosil. With all that in mind, it's really difficult to take him down, and that's why he starts to appear in so many different modes. He's always a threat in Tournament Arena. With a 1-hit piercing attack, he fits into some of the most difficult legendary events to get through, and his drones can make them pretty trivial, at least in the early stages. He's a pain in guild wars, and can even fit into the AdMech team in guild raids. So all in all, one of the smallest characters in the game is my number 1 most versatile Xenos pick for the year. And that is our top 10 Xenos for 2025. It's getting increasingly more difficult to pick this top 10 as the number of Xenos continue to rise, and I'm sure that there are some on this list that'll be quite contentious with you all, or maybe even missed that you would have had on here. Either way, I think it's safe to say that every pick on this list in some place is an incredibly good character, so don't hold back in leveling them if you manage to get lucky drawing them out of requisition chests. In a video coming soon, we will take a look at the top 10 Imperials for 2025, so hit that subscribe button because we have a lot of really big subscriber targets to hit this year, and so far we are doing excellently. You keep me motivated, keep me making content, so I'll see you next time.